Before rivers, before mountains, before even the whisper of wind, there was night. Not empty darkness, but a broad, velvety hush that stretched without edges. It was the soft space where dreams would one day come from, yet no one existed to dream. Everything was still, quiet, waiting. And in that ancient silence moved Nyx. Her presence flowed like the deepest twilight. Her hair trailed behind her like endless shadow, sprinkled with faint sparks that were not yet stars. Her steps made no sound, not because she was silent, but because sound itself had not been born. She wandered the quiet without question. This was her realm, her breath, her existence. Yet something stirred within her, a sensation unfamiliar, gentle, but impossible to ignore, as though something hidden inside her was calling to be born. Nyx paused. From her heart, a small glimmer of pale light emerged. It was fragile, trembling softly, as though unsure whether it should exist. Nyx cupped her hands around the light, and the light began to unfold. At first, it shimmered like mist, then like threads of silk catching the faintest invisible glow. Finally, taking form, becoming shape, becoming someone. 3 figures stood in her palms, small as candle flames, yet powerful as the future. The first one blinked up with wide, bright eyes full of wonder. This was Clotho, who would one day spin the first thread of every life. She smiled as though she already saw stories waiting to begin. The second sister rose gracefully, her expression thoughtful and calm. She carried the stillness of deep lakes and steady breaths. This was Lachesis, who would determine the path each life would follow. The third sister looked older than the others, though her face was gentle. Her eyes held the quiet understanding of endings, not tragic, not cruel, just necessary. This was Atropos, who would one day decide when each thread had reached its final moment. Nyx gazed upon them, not as a creator looks at her creation, but as a mother looks at her children. She drew them close, and in that embrace, something new came into the universe. Not matter, not light, but love, the first love ever to exist. But love alone could not hold the worlds that were waiting to be born. There needed to be a place for fate to take shape. So Nyx opened her hands, and reality itself responded. A hall formed around them, silent, infinite, still. The hall of the loom. The floor was woven from untouched possibility. The air shimmered like the surface of water before a stone breaks it. And at the center stood the loom, not made of wood or metal, but of meaning itself. Clotho approached first. She reached out, her fingers trembling only with wonder. With the lightest touch, a thread formed in her hand, new, delicate, glowing faintly. A life, the first life. Lachesis stepped forward and held the thread. She did not pull or stretch it. She simply understood it, its joys, its sorrows, its wonders yet to unfold. Then Atropos lifted the thread, not to sever it, but to feel its final heartbeat. Far away, distant, but real. The 3 sisters looked at one another. They understood their purpose, not because they were told, but because destiny lived inside them. Nyx watched them with the knowledge that her daughters would shape all things. Gods, mortals, heroes, kingdoms, triumphs, and tragedies. But even she did not know what stories would come. For fate does not speak of outcomes, only of paths. And just beyond the walls of the Hall of the Loom, something vast and unseen stirred, as if creation itself was holding its breath, waiting for the first thread to be woven into the world. So the sisters began their work. And in the stillness before all things, the long story of life, death, and everything between quietly opened its first page. The three sisters lived not in a palace, nor upon a mountain, but in a place older than both earth and sky. There was no door to their realm, yet every life passed through it. It was called simply the loom of eternity. It was not made of wood or stone. It was not built by hands or shaped by tools. It was the very order of existence itself. Threads stretched across it, some fine as a whisper, some thick as a storm wind, some bright, some dark, all moving with gentle, endless purpose. Clotho, the youngest in appearance, sat nearest the beginning. Her fingers never rested, yet she was never tired. Whenever breath entered a newborn's lungs, Clotho was there, guiding the first strand of its life into the loom. She did not choose who was born. She did not choose where. She only spun the thread with care, the beginning of a story she would never finish herself. Beside her, Lachesis worked in quiet focus. She examined each thread, its color, weight, and shape, and decided how long it would run. A king's thread did not shine brighter than a shepherd's. A poet's thread was not softer than a soldier's. For Lachesis knew what mortals often forget. Every life has equal worth in the tapestry. What made a thread meaningful was not its length, nor the noise it made in the world, but the way it wove itself into others. Some threads crossed many lives, some touched only a few, but everyone left a mark. And then, at the far end, sat Atropos. She did not watch the beginning. She did not watch the journey. She waited for the moment when a life had reached its true end. Her shears were small, almost delicate, yet nothing could resist their edge. When she cut a thread, the tapestry did not tear. Nothing was lost. The thread simply completed its purpose, and its place remained forever in the weave. For to the fates, death was not an ending, but the quiet closing of a circle. Mortals feared Atropos. They whispered her name with trembling breath, but the sisters themselves felt no fear, no sorrow, no joy. They did not create fate. They did not decide fate. They simply revealed it. Time flowed because they tended it. Life continued because they guided it. The world moved forward because their threads held it together. Yet even as they worked, something began to stir. A force rising like a distant storm, a new power born from chaos and fire. For soon, the gods would come. They would build thrones, shape mountains, command lightning, oceans, and sky. They would love, fight, deceive, protect, destroy. And they would learn something that the Moirai already knew. Even gods must bow to fate. But that part of the story had not yet arrived. For now, the three sisters wove in silence, and eternity unfolded beneath their hands. In time, the world awakened. Mountains rose, rivers carved the earth, stars finally opened like lanterns in the sky, and from the raw forces of the world, the gods were born. Among them was Zeus, who would one day be called King of the Gods. He ruled the sky, lightning, and the order of Olympus. His voice shook mountains, and his power bent the clouds. But even Zeus was not the first power. One day, he came to the place where the three sisters worked. He did not come with thunder. He did not come with command. He came quietly. Clotho continued to spin. Lachesis continued to measure. Atropos watched the threads. Zeus spoke. "If I am king of gods and men, then fate should bend to my will." But Lachesis only lifted her calm eyes. Even a king walks a path measured before he steps upon it. Zeus looked to Atropos, whose shears rested lightly in her hand. "And what of endings?" he asked. Atropos answered simply, "Endings come for all, even for gods, though not in the same way as men." Zeus understood. Power could change storms. Power could move armies. But power could not change destiny. He bowed his head, not in fear, but in acknowledgement. From that day, Zeus ruled the heavens. But the Moirai ruled the story of everything. Even the gods, with all their glory and wrath, walked the path the sisters had already woven. Time passed, and the world filled with life. Cities rose along riverbanks. Olive trees grew on sunlit hills. Mortals learned to speak, to build, to dream. And among them, sometimes, a hero was born. When such a child took their first breath, the Moirai knew it at once. Clotho would spin the thread, brighter than others, glowing faintly like dawn. Lachesis would pause for a moment longer than usual, studying the thread with quiet care. For a hero's life was never simple. Heroes were not born for peaceful days. They were born for struggle, for battles, choices, glory, and sacrifice. Their names would be remembered. Songs would be sung about them long after they were gone. But their lives were often short. For greatness and long peace rarely share the same road. And so, Lachesis would measure a hero's thread carefully, not too short, so that their deeds could shape the world, not too long, for greatness in excess turns into ruin. Then Atropos would nod, accepting the ending that must one day come. Mortals believed heroes rose because they were chosen by gods. But in truth, heroes were born because fate had woven them into the world's story. Some were destined for triumph, some for tragedy, many for both. For the greatest stories were always woven from both light and shadow. And though the Moirai never interfered, never forced, never commanded, every hero, knowingly or not, walked the path already set for them. A path not cruel, not kind, simply true. Among all heroes, one name shone brighter than the rest: Achilles. When he was born, the Moirai felt it at once. Clotho spun a thread brilliant and strong, glowing like fire. Lachesis measured it and paused, for she saw two possible paths, both true. One, a long life, quiet, forgotten by history. The other, a short life, blazing with glory, remembered for eternity. Lachesis did not choose. Mortals always had choices, but every choice had a cost. Years later, Achilles grew into a warrior unmatched, fast as wind, fearless as flame. Then came the Trojan War. His mother Thetis begged him not to go. She knew what awaited him. "If you stay," she told him, "you will live a long life. Your children will play at your feet. Your hair will grey in peace, but no one will remember your name. If you go to war, your name will never die, but your life will be short." Achilles was silent for a long time. Then he spoke. "A life may end, but glory does not." And so he chose the path that Lachesis had already measured. He chose the short thread, the bright one. When the spear that would end his life flew toward him, Atropos did not hesitate. She cut the thread with her small iron shears. Not in cruelty, not in anger, but simply because the moment had come. And Achilles' name lived forever, just as he chose. Another hero's thread came to the Moirai, one heavier than most, woven with both strength and suffering. His name was Heracles. Clotho spun his life thread thick and powerful, for he would be born with strength beyond any mortal. But Lachesis saw more than strength. She saw struggle. Heracles would not have an easy life. His steps would be marked by trials, loss, and deeds so great that the world itself would remember them. Mortals called these the 12 labors, but to the Moirai, they were simply the path his soul was shaped to follow. Heracles fought beasts that should not be defeated: the Nemean lion, the Hydra, the three-headed hound of the dead. He crossed lands where no mortal had walked and faced fears that lived deeper than night. Yet, every time the world thought he would fall, he rose again. Not because of strength alone, but because his thread had not yet reached its end. At last, when his mortal body could bear no more, the Moirai watched as Zeus intervened. Not to change fate, for that could not be done, but to complete it. Heracles' mortal life ended, but his spirit was lifted to Olympus. There he became a god, not because he escaped his fate, but because he fulfilled it completely. Lachesis had measured his life not just in years, but in the way it would shape the world. And Atropos, when she cut his mortal thread, did so gently. For some endings are not endings at all, but beginnings of a different kind. Not every life in the tapestry was heroic. Most were quiet, simple, and gentle. And yet, even the quiet lives were loved deeply. There were moments across all the world when someone would fall to their knees and beg for a thread not to be cut. A mother holding a sick child, a husband beside a fading wife, a child watching a parent grow weak. Their voices rose, not toward Olympus, but toward the unseen sisters who shaped destiny. And though the Moirai heard every cry, they did not answer. Not because they were unfeeling, but because their task was not to comfort nor to harm. Life had its beginning, life had its journey, and life had its appointed end. The sisters did not choose when sorrow came. They only ensured that every thread completed the shape it was meant to hold. Yet, if one looked closely at Atropos in these moments, the one who ended each life, sometimes, just briefly, her hand paused, not to delay the end, only to acknowledge the weight of love that surrounded it. Because love itself was part of the tapestry too. Every tear, every farewell, every final whisper, all of it was woven into the pattern that would outlast the world. And though mortals could not change fate, their love gave meaning to every thread. For the Moirai shaped life, but mortals shaped what that life meant. Of the three sisters, Atropos was the most misunderstood. Mortals feared her name, for she was the one who ended every thread. They imagined her cold, uncaring, unmoved, but they did not see her as she truly was. Atropos watched every life from beginning to end. She saw the first breath, the laughter of youth, the warmth of friendship, the courage and the doubt, the quiet moments that no history would ever remember. She saw the whole of a life. And when the moment came for a thread to be cut, she did not strike it down in haste. She waited for the last memory, the last heartbeat, the final gentle stillness. Only then did she lift the small iron shears and close them with the softest whisper, not to erase a life, but to complete it. For what is a story that never ends? What is a song with no final note? A thread uncut would unravel the tapestry itself, and without endings, nothing could have meaning. Atropos knew this truth quietly. Life is precious because it does not last. She was not the bringer of sorrow. She was the keeper of balance. And though mortals feared her, she never feared them. For she understood something deeper than fear. Every ending makes room for another beginning. Though the fates worked in silence, there were times when even the gods came to their loom. Apollo came first. He brought music, healing, sunlight. Yet even he had lived long enough to see those he cherished slip from life. He bowed his golden head before the sisters. "Let this one live," he asked once softly. "Just a little longer." Clotho did not stop spinning. Lachesis did not change her measure. Atropos did not lift her shears, not out of defiance, but because the thread had already reached its end. Apollo left in silence. Another time, Hera came, proud queen of Olympus, no stranger to grief or fury. She did not plead. She demanded. "I am goddess of families," she said. "I will not see this one broken." But Lachesis looked at her with calm eyes. Even love cannot hold a life beyond its time. Hera's anger could move the clouds, but not the tapestry. And then, once, Zeus himself returned. Not as a king, not as thunder, just as a father who feared the thread of his own son was growing short. He did not speak. He simply stood beside the sisters, his hands closed tightly, as though holding lightning inside himself. Atropos looked at him without judgment. "You know," she said quietly, "that even gods must walk the path measured for them." Zeus nodded, not with rage, not with power, but with understanding. For the gods could shape storms and shift mountains and guide the hearts of mortals. But the Moirai shaped the meaning of time itself. And so, even the gods bowed to the three sisters at the loom. War came often to the world of mortals. When armies clashed and steel met shield, men believed victory belonged to strength, to courage, to skill. But on the far edge of every battlefield, three silent figures watched. Clotho spun new threads as soldiers were born. Lachesis measured how far each would walk. Atropos waited, quiet, among the falling arrows. She did not choose who lived or died. The measure had already been woven long before the drums of war began. Some warriors, who seemed certain to fall, rose again and again, untouched, as if guided by invisible hands. Others, young and fearless, met their end in the first clash of blades. To mortals, it seemed unfair, unpredictable, cruel. But the sisters did not watch with coldness. They watched with clarity. They saw every life not as a moment, but as a whole thread. The laughter of childhood, the love found, the mistakes made, the hopes carried. So when a thread ended on the battlefield, Atropos did not cut it with violence. She closed her shears as gently as a mother closing her child's eyes. And somewhere, far from the shouting of war, a new thread began to spin. For every end fed into another beginning, and the tapestry continued. There was once a young scribe named Moirai, a quiet soul who spent his life among scrolls and ink. He feared many things: failure, loneliness, and most of all, the moment when his thread would end. So, one night, guided by a trembling heart, he climbed the long road into the mountains where no bird sang and no wind stirred. At the summit, he found the Cave of Threads. Inside, the air glowed with a soft, endless hum, like whispered memory. There the three sisters worked. Moirai fell to his knees. "Please," he said, his voice small, "I do not ask for more time, only to understand the shape of my life." Clotho looked at him gently. "You wish to see your own thread?" Moirai nodded. Lachesis gestured to the tapestry before them, a great, shimmering expanse woven of light and time. "Look," she said. Moirai expected to see something grand, something heroic, but his thread was simple, a modest line of warm gold. It passed through laughter shared with friends, the quiet joy of helping others read, moments of kindness so small he had forgotten them. Yet the thread glowed softly, as though lit from within. Moirai's eyes filled with tears. "I thought my life was insignificant," he whispered. Atropos spoke quietly. "There are no insignificant lives." He bowed his head, not in fear, but in peace. He had wanted to know if his life mattered. Now he knew. When he rose to leave, he did not walk as the same man. He carried no fear of endings anymore, for he had seen the beauty in his own thread. There came a day unlike any other. No wars raged, no kings prayed, no births cried out into the morning air. All of existence felt a pause, a breath held by the world itself. And in the cave of threads, the loom fell silent. Clotho's hand stilled. Lachesis lowered her measuring rod. Atropos did not lift her shears. For the first time since the dawn of creation, the sisters simply stood together. The threads shimmered quietly before them. 1,000,000 lives moving, loving, struggling, dreaming. The tapestry glowed as though lit by the memory of every heartbeat. The world was not ending. No disaster had struck. It was simply a moment of stillness, a reminder that even destiny has pauses, breaths between the weaving. Clotho sighed softly. There is so much life. Lachesis nodded. And each one is different. Atropos looked at them both. And each one is complete. The sisters, so often thought distant and cold, stood simply being as the world turned quietly beneath them. In the pause, they remembered why they did not interfere, why they did not choose, why they did not change. Because fate was not a cage, but a path each soul walked in its own way. After a moment, Clotho lifted the spindle again. The thread began to turn. Lachesis measured. Atropos waited. And time moved forward once more. Long before Olympus, before Titans, before even Earth had taken shape, there was night. Not darkness, but a deep, endless quiet. From that eternal silence, the goddess Nyx was born, older than light, older than gods, older than fate itself. She moved like a shadow across the nothingness, and from her came many ancient powers, dreams, sleep, longing, doom, hope. But among all her children, none were as solemn and steady as the three sisters. They did not cry when they were born. They did not speak. They simply began to work. Clotho reached into the silent void and drew out the first thread, a single line of warm golden light. Lachesis touched it, and the thread stretched forward, finding shape and distance. Atropos waited, not in darkness, but in patience. The first thread became the first life, not human, not God, but the spark of existence itself. The cosmos breathed for the first time. Stars formed, mountains rose, seas gathered. The winds began to dance. All of it followed the line of that single thread. And when Atropos finally closed her shears, the first life ended. And the universe, for the first time, understood the meaning of completion. From that moment forward, the sisters did not guide creation. They balanced it, for every beginning must have an end, and every end gives room for a new beginning. This is how fate was born, not out of power, not out of control, but out of harmony. The sisters did not rule life. They accompanied it. The tapestry was nearly complete. Golden threads, dark threads, fragile threads, all woven into one endless pattern that shimmered like memory in starlight. Clotho slowed her spinning. The spindle turned gently, like a lullaby. Lachesis traced the woven paths with quiet eyes, seeing how every life touched another, how joy and sorrow walked hand in hand. Atropos stood very still, for the end was near. Not the end of the world, but the end of this story. Across the tapestry, millions of lives glowed softly. A mother holding her child, a warrior returning home in peace, a poet whispering his last lines, a lover remembering a promise kept. The sisters had never ruled these lives. They only witnessed them. And now, with gentle care, they prepared the final thread of this tale. Clotho spun, Light, calm, steady. Lachesis measured, sure, unwavering. Atropos lifted her shears, soft as a sigh. But instead of cutting, she spoke. Every life ends, but nothing is ever lost. The tapestry glowed brighter, the light of every memory ever felt, every laugh, every tear, every beginning, every goodbye. The sisters stepped back. The tapestry was whole, and through its endless woven lines, one truth flowed clear as water. Fate is not chains. Fate is connection. The sisters returned to their loom, not to begin again, but to continue as they always had. Quiet, patient, steady, not feared, not worshipped, simply there, guarding the balance of all things. The story of the three sisters of fate did not end here. It simply became part of the tapestry.